jingled softly as Leonard Hill stepped into the Café Melrose. It was a quiet, unassuming place nestled between a bookstore and an antique shop on a sleepy street corner. The kind of café that served the same loyal customers their usual coffee without fuss, where the clatter of cups mingled with soft murmurs of conversation and the faint hum of old jazz music on the speakers. Leonard had been coming here for years, ever since the war had ended and the world had shifted beneath his feet like sand slipping through fingers. He sat alone at his usual corner table, an aging veteran with a face weathered by time and hardship, nursing a lukewarm cup of black coffee that matched the gloom in his heart. Leonard was a man of few words, someone who carried his past quietly. Most people didn't notice him. The café's regulars had long accepted his silent presence as just part of the background, like the worn wooden tables or the flickering candlelight. But Leonard's mind was anything but quiet. His thoughts swirled like restless ghosts, memories of distant places, distant times, etched with pain and loss. Sometimes, the war felt like it was still marching inside him, a constant rhythm just beneath the surface, pounding quietly but relentlessly. That morning, the café was busier than usual. Sophie, a young waitress with an ethereal voice and a shy smile, had recently started performing songs during the quieter hours. She sang old classics, melodies that felt out of place in the modern world, but carried a timelessness that made the café feel like stepping back into another era. It was her way of bringing something special to the customers, something soulful and real. Today, as Leonard sat hunched over his coffee, Sophie stepped onto the small corner stage and began to sing. The song she chose was one that Leonard hadn't heard in decades, an old wartime ballad, soft and haunting, that had once been the soundtrack to his darkest nights. At first, he didn't react, but as the melody floated through the air, his hand froze mid-lift, the cup suspended between his fingers. The words struck him like a sudden gale, blowing open a door he thought was firmly shut. The song was the same one he'd listened to every night on a crackling radio, deep in a muddy trench somewhere far from home. It was the song that had somehow held him and his comrades together when everything else was crumbling. Hope, humanity, sanity. Leonard's eyes grew distant as memories unfolded like a faded photograph in his mind. The laughter of friends long gone, the stench of wet earth and gunpowder, the silent prayers whispered under a cold, starless sky. Sophie's voice wavered, uncertain, but brave. She didn't realize the weight her song carried, or the silent figure it stirred in the corner. Leonard's breath caught as he rose slowly, steadying himself against the table. His years had taught him how to keep control, how to hide the tremors beneath a calm exterior. But inside, the walls he'd built were shaking. He made his way to the counter, where Sophie was wiping down glasses, her cheeks flushed from the effort. "You know that song?" Leonard asked, his voice rough, like gravel sliding over stone. Sophie looked up, startled. I learned it from my grandmother," she said softly. "She said it was one of the songs her father used to sing when he came back from the war." Leonard nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "I was there. During the war." His voice faltered but held a quiet strength. "We used to listen to it on the radio to keep from losing our minds." He paused, searching for words he hadn't said out loud in years. It was the sound of hope when everything else was gone. Sophie reached out, almost instinctively, but then pulled back. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring back anything painful." "No," Leonard said, shaking his head, a faint smile breaking through the weariness. "It's not the song that hurts. It's the silence that comes after." They stood there for a moment in the gentle hum of the café, two strangers linked by a melody that transcended time and pain. Leonard's eyes held a softness that few had seen, a glimmer of the man he once was before the war carved its scars into his soul. Over the next few days, Sophie continued to sing, and Leonard kept coming back. The song became a bridge between past and present, a small thread of light woven through the fabric of his quiet life. It wasn't just music anymore, it was healing. Sophie, too, grew more confident, her voice stronger as she realized that her songs were not just entertainment, but a lifeline for someone who needed them more than she knew. One afternoon, as the late sun filtered through the café windows, casting long shadows across the floor, Leonard shared a story. He told Sophie about the nights in the trenches when the radio crackled to life. The soldiers huddled close, their faces gaunt and eyes heavy with exhaustion. They would listen to the voices singing songs from home, songs of love and loss, of courage and survival. It was those songs that kept Leonard alive, that reminded him of a future worth fighting for. Sophie listened wide-eyed, absorbing every word. She had never met anyone like Leonard before, a man whose quiet presence belied the storm he had weathered. Her own youthful struggles seemed trivial in comparison. And yet, here they were, connected by a song that was older than either of them. One rainy evening, Leonard arrived at the café with a slight limp, the years of service evident in his gait. The café was nearly empty, the soft glow of lamps casting a cozy warmth. Sophie was on stage again, her voice rising and falling with the familiar melody. This time, Leonard joined in softly, his voice cracking but steady. For the first time, he let himself feel the music fully, not as a prisoner of silence, but as a man rediscovering his own humanity. When the song ended, the few patrons who had been quietly listening offered a gentle applause. Leonard smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that reached his eyes. Sophie looked at him, her face glowing with a mix of pride and gratitude. "Thank you," Leonard said simply. "No," Sophie replied. "Thank you for reminding me why these songs matter." From that moment on, the café became more than a place to get coffee. It was a sanctuary of stories and memories, a place where the past and present intertwined in melodies that healed invisible wounds. Leonard's presence brought a quiet dignity to the room, and Sophie's voice became a vessel carrying the hopes of generations. In the months that followed, Leonard's visits became a ritual. He and Sophie would talk, sometimes about the war, sometimes about life, but mostly about the music. The old song remained a constant thread, a reminder that even in the darkest times, there was a light to follow. Leonard began to open up, sharing not just memories but laughter and tears, rediscovering parts of himself he thought were lost. One chilly autumn morning, as leaves swirled outside and the café buzzed with its usual warmth, Leonard sat back at his table, watching Sophie prepare for her set. She caught his eye and gave a small nod. He nodded back, a silent understanding passing between them. The song started, clear and pure, filling the room with a fragile beauty. Leonard closed his eyes, letting the music wash over him. For the first time in a long time, he felt whole. It wasn't just a song. It was a lifeline, a connection, a promise that no matter how far the past reached, the present could hold peace. And in that little café, on that ordinary day, Leonard Hill found his way home.